Did you know that stories have a unique way of connecting with our minds? The tale of Hamillion Fluter is a perfect example of how a compelling story can draw you in and make learning more effective. Research shows that our brains are naturally wired to respond to narratives, making it easier to understand and remember information. In fact, when facts are presented within a story, you're much more likely to remember them. Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Speak English Fluently. I'm your host David, and today we're diving into the fascinating story of Hamillion Fluter. A tale that will not only spark your imagination but also help you improve your English skills. Before we dive in, if you're new here and eager to enhance your English fluency through captivating stories and conversations, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This way, you'll always stay updated on our linguistic adventures. Now, let's embark on the fascinating journey of Hamillion Fluter, a tale that will transport you to impossible places and expand your English vocabulary along the way. In the quaint town of Millbrook, where time seemed to stand still, an ordinary librarian named Hamillion Fluter was about to have his life turned upside down. It was on a Tuesday morning, like any other, that the wheels of fate began to turn.
As the sun rose over the sleepy town, Hamillion's daily routine was followed to the letter.
His alarm clock was silenced at precisely 7 a.m., and 2 pieces of toast with strawberry jam were consumed for breakfast. The familiar path to the Millbrook Public Library was trodden, with Hamillion's sensible shoes clicking against the cobblestones. Little did Hamillion know that on this particular morning, his predictable life was about to be shattered like a mirror in a house of curiosities. As the library came into view, something unusual was noticed. A strange, ethereal glow was emanating from the basement windows, casting an otherworldly light onto the dewy grass. Hamillion's curiosity was piqued, and his pace was quickened. The old brass key was inserted into the lock, and the heavy wooden door was pushed open with a creak that seemed to echo through the empty building. Hamillion's footsteps were heard echoing through the silent halls as he made his way towards the basement stairs. With each step down into the depths of the library, the air grew thicker with anticipation. The musty scent of old books was intensified, mingling with an unfamiliar aroma that could only be described as magical. As Hamillion reached the bottom of the stairs, his eyes were drawn to a shelf that seemed to shimmer and pulse with an inner light. Among the dust-covered tomes and forgotten manuscripts, a book unlike any other was discovered. Its cover was made of a material that defied description, shifting and changing colors like the surface of a soap bubble. Golden letters spelled out the title, "The Atlas of Impossible Places." Hamillion's hand was extended, almost of its own accord, towards the mysterious tome. As his fingers made contact with the cover, a surge of energy was felt coursing through his body. The world around him began to spin, colors blending and swirling like paint on a cosmic canvas. In the blink of an eye, Hamillion Fluter, the ordinary librarian from Millbrook, was transported to a realm beyond his wildest imagination. Now, dear viewers, let's take a moment to appreciate the rich vocabulary we've encountered so far. Words like ethereal, emanating, and anticipation add depth and color to our story. As we continue, pay close attention to the descriptive language used. It's an excellent way to expand your English vocabulary and improve your ability to paint vivid pictures with words. When the spinning sensation subsided, Hamillion's surroundings were observed with wide-eyed wonder. A lush, vibrant forest stretched out before him, unlike anything seen in the mortal realm. The trees bore leaves of every color imaginable, shimmering and shifting in a non-existent breeze. The air was filled with the sweet scent of flowers that had never been catalogued in any botanical guide. As Hamilion's senses were overwhelmed by the fantastical landscape, a melodious voice was heard from behind him. "Welcome to Chromawood, Hamilion Fluter. Your arrival has been anticipated." Hamilion's body was turned, and his gaze fell upon a being of indescribable beauty, skin that shimmered like opal and eyes that sparkled like the night sky were beheld. The creature's smile was warm and inviting, instantly putting Hamilion at ease despite the extraordinary circumstances. "I am Lumina, guardian of Chromawood." The being's introduction was made. "A great adventure awaits you, one that will take you to the most impossible places in all of existence." Hamilion's mind was racing with questions. How had he been transported to this magical realm? Why had he been chosen for this adventure? And, most pressingly, how would he find his way back to the comfortable predictability of Millbrook? As if Hamilion's thoughts were being read, Lumina's voice was heard once more. "Fear not, Hamilion. Your journey has only just begun. The Atlas of Impossible Places has selected you for a reason, and in time understanding will come." A path that wound its way through the colourful trees was indicated by Lumina.
"This path must be followed."
"Your first challenge will be encountered. Remember, in the impossible places nothing is as it seems, and everything is possible if belief is held." With those words, Lumina's form was dissolved into a shower of sparkling light, leaving Hamilion alone in the strange, beautiful forest. For a moment, the temptation to search for a way home was felt. But then, a sense of excitement that hadn't been experienced in years began to bubble up inside Hamilyon. This was his opportunity to do something extraordinary, to break free from the constraints of his predictable life. A deep breath was taken, glasses were straightened, and Hamilyon's cardigan was adjusted. The first step onto the path was taken, marking the beginning of an adventure that would forever change the course of his life. So viewers, as we follow Hamilyon on his journey, we're not just exploring a fantastical world, we're also delving into the rich tapestry of the English language. Notice how the passive voice is being used to tell this story. This narrative technique adds an air of mystery and allows us to focus on the actions and events rather than the person performing them. For example, instead of saying Hamilyon took a deep breath, we say a deep breath was taken. This structure is commonly used in formal writing and can be a powerful tool in your English language arsenal. Now, let's continue our adventure with Hamilyon Fluter. As Hamilyon's journey along the path was continued, the forest around him seemed to pulse with life. Secrets were whispered by the leaves on the trees in a language that couldn't be understood, and flowers turned to face him as he passed, as if his progress was being watched. After what felt like hours, though certainty couldn't be held, as Hamilyon's watch had stopped functioning the moment Chromawood was entered, a clearing was reached. In the centre, a sight that defied all logic was beheld. A river unlike any that had ever been seen flowed majestically. The water moved in distinct bands of colour, each one shimmering and shifting independently of the others. On the bank of this rainbow river, a small gnarled tree was standing. From its twisted branches, 7 glass bottles were suspended, each filled with a different coloured liquid that matched the hues of the extraordinary waterway. As the tree was approached, a wooden sign with an inscription was noticed. To cross the Rainbow River, a choice must be made. 7 bottles before you, but only one to be taken. Choose wisely, dear traveller, for in this magic stream, the wrong colour will trap you in an endless dream. Hamilyon's head was scratched as the riddle was pondered. Throughout his life, a talent for solving puzzles had been possessed. But this challenge was unlike anything encountered in the books back home. The river was studied carefully, and the flow of colors was observed. Red was on top, followed by orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet at the bottom. The realization was made that the arrangement mirrored that of a rainbow. But which color should be chosen? Hamillion's mind was cast back to science lessons from his school days. The memory of learning about the visible light spectrum was recalled, and how white light was actually composed of all the colors of the rainbow. An idea was struck upon. If white light contained all the colors, perhaps the solution was to mix all the colors together. Excitement was felt as this deduction was made. Each bottle was carefully taken down, and a small amount of each color was poured into Hamillion's palm. As the liquids were mixed, a glow was emitted, and emerging into brilliant white light was observed. With anticipation causing his heart to pound, the edge of the river was approached by Hamillion. A deep breath was taken, and the glowing white liquid was sprinkled onto the surface of the water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sound like tinkling bells was heard, and a bridge of pure white light was materialized across the river. Delight was expressed through Hamillion's laughter. The riddle had been solved. Cautiously, a step onto the bridge was taken. Solid ground was felt beneath his feet, and a gentle warmth was emanated. As the Rainbow River was crossed, the colors swirled beneath, creating mesmerizing patterns. When the other side was reached, a turn back was made, and the disappearance of the bridge was witnessed, leaving the river as it was before. A sense of pride in his accomplishment was felt by Hamillion as the journey down the path on the other side of the river was continued. The forest here was different. The trees were taller, their trunks spiraling up towards the sky in impossible twists and turns. As Hamillion walked, reflection on how much his life had changed in just a few short hours was made. The transformation from a quiet librarian to an adventurer in a magical world had occurred. And yet, strangely, a feeling of being more like himself than ever before was experienced. The path ahead curved around a large boulder, and as it was followed, a gasp was elicited by what was seen. Before Hamillion stood an enormous castle made entirely of books. Its towers were constructed from stacks of encyclopedias, its walls were lined with rows upon rows of novels, and its windows were framed by poetry collections. A sign in front of the castle was read, "The Library of Lost Stories." Hamillion's heart leaped with excitement. If there was one thing that was known, it was libraries. Perhaps this was why the Atlas had chosen him. With renewed determination, Hamillion's cardigan was straightened, and an approach to the book castle was made. Readiness for whatever challenge awaited inside was felt. As we delve deeper into Hamillion's adventure, we're encountering a wealth of descriptive language and idiomatic expressions. Phrases like "cast back to," "struck upon an idea," and "elicited a gasp" are excellent examples of how English can be used to create vivid imagery and convey emotions. Moreover, the passive voice continues to be employed, adding an air of mystery and focusing our attention on the events unfolding around Hamillion. This storytelling technique is not only engaging but also provides an excellent opportunity to practice and understand this grammatical structure. Now, let's continue our journey and see what awaits Hamillion in the Library of Lost Stories. As the massive doors of the book castle were approached, it was noticed that they were constructed from oversized book covers. Once Upon a Time was displayed on one door, while The End was shown on the other. A chuckle at the clever design was emitted by Hamillion. With a deep breath, the doors were pushed open and a step inside was taken. The interior caused Hamillion's breath to be taken away. The ceiling soared impossibly high, with floating chandeliers made of glowing bookmarks casting a warm light throughout the vast space. Bookshelves stretched as far as the eye could see, their contents shimmering with an otherworldly energy. Suddenly, a voice echoing through the library was heard, causing Hamillion to be startled. "Welcome, Keeper of Stories," it said. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I'm not a keeper of stories," Hamillion's reply was given, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm just a librarian from Millbrook." A warm chuckle from the voice was heard. "Ah, but what is a librarian if not a keeper of stories? You have been chosen for a reason, Hamillion Fluter. The Library of Lost Stories is in need of your help." Intrigue was felt by Hamillion. "What kind of help?" was asked. At that moment, the air in front of him shimmered and a figure was materialized. An elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that twinkled with wisdom was beheld. A robe covered in swirling text that seemed to move and change as it was watched was worn by her. "I am Neratia, the guardian of this library." Her introduction was made with a smile. For millennia, stories from all across the multiverse have been collected and preserved by us. But recently, something terrible has happened. Stories are disappearing, fading from existence as if they were never written. A frown was formed on Hamillion's face. As a lover of books, the idea of stories disappearing forever was deeply troubling. "But how is that possible?" was inquired. A sigh was released by Neratia, her expression becoming grave. "It is believed by us that a powerful entity known as the Void is consuming stories, erasing them from reality. If this continues, entire worlds and civilizations could be lost forever." A gesture for Hamillion to follow was made by her, and a walk through the library was begun. As they passed, it was noticed by Hamillion that some of the books on the shelves were fading, their titles becoming harder to read. "Your task, should you choose to accept it," Neratia's explanation was continued, "is to journey through the impossible places, collecting the essence of lost stories and bringing them back here. Only by preserving these tales can hope to stop the void and save the multiverse be held." Hamillion's mind reeled at the enormity of the task. He was just a small-town librarian, not some grand hero. And yet, hadn't dreams of being part of a great story always been harbored? "I'll do it," was said. Surprise at the determination in his own voice was felt by Hamillion. "But how are these lost stories to be found?" A smile was given by Neratia, and a reach into her robe was made, from which a small, ornate compass was pulled out. Its face was divided not into cardinal directions, but into genres: fantasy, mystery, romance, and so on. "This is the plot compass." An explanation was provided as it was handed to Hamillion. "Guidance to where the lost stories are hiding will be given by it. But be warned, each story you encounter will present its own challenges. You must become part of the narrative to save it." The compass was taken by Hamillion, its weight felt in his hand. A hum with magical energy was emitted, the needle spinning wildly before settling on adventure. "Now," Neratia's voice took on a more serious tone, "there's something else that should be known by you. Agents of the Void are everywhere, beings known as the Erasers. Attempts to stop you from collecting the lost stories will be made by them. Caution must be exercised, and your instincts must be trusted." A nod was given by Hamillion. An attempt to process all this information was made. Many questions were held, but one burned brighter than the rest. "Why me?" was asked. "Out of all the people in all the worlds, why was I chosen for this task?" Neratia's eyes softened. "Because, Hamillion Fluter, something special is possessed by you within. A love for stories that burns brighter than most, and a heart that understands their true power. You may not see yourself as a hero, but sometimes the most unlikely people make the greatest difference." Her words filled Hamillion with a warmth never felt before. For the first time in his life, a feeling of truly belonging somewhere was experienced. "Now," a gesture towards a large, ornate mirror at the end of the hall was made by Naratia, "are you ready to begin your first quest?" Hamillion's reflection in the mirror was looked at. The same ordinary man that had always been seen was observed. Slightly rumpled cardigan, thick glasses, thinning hair. But something different in his eyes was noticed now. A spark of adventure, of purpose. Shoulders were straightened and a nod was given. "I'm ready." A smile was given by Naratia, and her hand was waved. The surface of the mirror began to ripple like water. "Then step through, Hamillion Fluter, and may the power of stories guide you." A deep breath was taken by Hamillion, the plot compass clutched tightly in his hand. A step forward was taken, and as the mirror was passed through, a rush of excitement was felt. The true beginning of his adventure was at hand, and uncertainty about where it would lead was felt. As the world around him shifted and blurred, a sensation of falling through space and time was experienced. When everything came back into focus, Hamillion found himself standing on a dimly lit street corner. The air was thick with fog, and the sound of distant jazz music drifted through the night. A look down at himself was taken, and a gasp was emitted. His cardigan and slacks had been replaced by a trench coat and fedora. The plot compass in his hand now resembled an old-fashioned pocket watch, its face still indicating mystery. "Well, well, well," a gravelly voice was heard from behind him. "Looks like we've got ourselves a new gumshoe in town." A turn was made by Hamillion to see a man leaning against a lamppost, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The man's face was hidden in shadow, but a glint of a detective's badge on his chest could be seen. "Welcome to the Noir Nebula, kid," an introduction was made by the detective. "Marlowe's the name, Charlie Marlowe, and you look like you could use a drink and a debriefing." Still trying to process his new surroundings, a nod was given by Hamillion, and Marlowe was followed down the foggy street. Entry was made into a smoky bar called the Inkwell, where a sultry singer was crooning a melancholy tune. As seats at the bar were taken, 2 whiskies were ordered by Marlowe. "So," Hamillion was addressed, "you're the new storykeeper, eh? Gotta say, you're not what was expected." A sip of whiskey was taken by Hamillion. A grimace at the burn was made. "To be honest, uncertainty about what to expect is felt by me as well. A lost story is being searched for, but knowledge of where to start is not possessed." A chuckle was emitted by Marlowe. "In this town, pal, a story is had by every street corner, and attempts to get lost are made by half of them. But there's one that's been causing a real stir lately. The case of the vanishing verse." "What's that?" was asked by Hamillion, intrigue being felt. "Disappearance of poetry all over the nebula has been occurring," an explanation was given by Marlowe. "Sonnets, haikus, epic poems, all gone without a trace. And with each verse that vanishes, fading of a piece of this world is witnessed." Racing of Hamillion's mind occurred. This had to be the work of the void that a warning about had been given by Naratia. "Are any leads possessed by you?" was inquired. Surprise at how easily the role of a detective was slipped into was felt. A nod was given by Marlowe. Narrowing of his eyes occurred. "Word on the street is that possession of more knowledge than is being let on is had by Dame Syllable. A joint called The Rhyme and Reason on the Edge of Town is run by her. But caution should be exercised, kid. In the Noir Nebula, nothing's black and white. Possession of secrets is had by everyone, and trust is a luxury that can't be afforded." At that moment, bursting open of the bar's door occurred, and rushing in of a woman in a shimmering dress was witnessed. Vibrant red was the colour of her hair, and frantic darting of her eyes around the room was observed. "Charlie," Marlowe was called out to, spotting of him having occurred. "They've taken him. Capture of Sonnet by the erasers has happened." Cursing under his breath was done by Marlowe. "One of our best informants is Sonnet," an explanation to Hamillion was given. "If possession of him is had by the erasers, much time is not had by us." Standing up was done by Hamillion. Feeling of a surge of determination occurred. "Then movement had better be gotten by us. Where is our starting point?" Grinning was done by Marlowe, a glint of approval in his eyes being noticed. "Our starting point is with Dame Syllable. If knowledge of where they might have taken Sonnet is possessed by anyone, it's her." As leaving of the bar was done and stepping back into the foggy night occurred, feeling of a mix of excitement and trepidation was experienced by Hamillion. About to be dived into head first was a mystery, with the fate of an entire world hanging in the balance. Twisting and turning of the streets of the Noir Nebula was observed, revealing of new shadows and secrets with each corner was done. The plot compass was consulted by Hamillion, its needle spinning wildly before settling firmly in the direction they were heading. "Tell me, kid." Breaking of the silence was done by Marlowe as they walked. "What brought you to our neck of the woods? It's not often that new faces are seen around here, especially ones that don't quite fit the mold, if you catch my drift." Consideration of how to explain his situation was given by Hamillion. Belief that a librarian from a small town was held by me is what I was. But finding of myself here was done, tasked with saving stories that are disappearing. Full understanding of why I was chosen is not possessed by me, but doing of my best is what will be attempted. A low whistle was emitted by Marlowe. "A librarian, eh? Well, I'll be damned. Maybe that's exactly what this place needs. Too long has passed since anyone around here cared about preserving stories. All about the next big scoop or the latest gossip, that's what it's become." Approaching of a building that seemed to shimmer and shift in the fog was done. Glowing neon letters spelled out the rhyme and reason above a door that looked like it was made from thousands of tiny, fluttering pages. "This is it, kid," announcement was made by Marlowe. "The domain of Dame Syllable. Watch your step and mind your words. In this joint, every syllable counts, and a single misplaced verb could be your undoing." Straightening of his fedora was done by Hamillion. A deep breath was taken. Understanding is had. "Lead the way, shall we?" Pushing open of the door was done by Marlowe, and stepping into a world where reality and poetry blurred was done by them. The air inside was thick with words, literally. Floating sentences and stanzas could be seen drifting through the smoky atmosphere, rearranging themselves into new poems before dissipating. At the far end of the room, seated on a throne made of oversized dictionaries, was a woman whose very presence commanded attention. Her hair was styled in the shape of a sonnet, each curl perfectly forming a line of iambic pentameter. Eyes that seemed to hold the depth of every story ever told were possessed by her. Well, speaking was done by Dame Syllable, her voice a melody of perfectly metered verse. What rhyme or reason brings a detective so grim, and a stranger whose story's yet to begin? Stepping forward was done by Marlowe, his hat removed in a show of respect. "Dame Syllable, your assistance is required by us. Capture of Sonnet has occurred, and belief that the erasers are behind it is held." A frown was formed on Dame Syllable's face, the words around her darkening and swirling agitatedly. "Sonnet, dear Sonnet, a master of rhyme, his capture's a crime most foul and sublime. Speak quickly, detective, and you, stranger new, what actions do you propose we should do?" Realization that he was being addressed was come to by Hamillion. Clearing of his throat was done. and an attempt to match the poetic cadence of the dame was made. A keeper of stories is what I've become, to save vanishing verses from whence they're from. Knowledge of sonnets' whereabouts is sought, to prevent his words from coming to naught. Raising of an eyebrow was done by Dame Syllable, a spark of interest in her eyes being seen.
A keeper of stories, how curious indeed, in times such as these, that's a role we most need.
But caution I give, for the path is not clear, the erasers are strong, and their intentions severe. Leaning forward on her throne was done by her, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow still maintained its poetic rhythm. In the forgotten library where memories fade, the erasers have made their shadowy glade. But be warned, dear keeper, for in that dark place your own story might vanish without a trace. Exchange of a glance with Marlowe was done by Hamillion. The forgotten library, it seemed their next destination was clear. But before departure could be made, one more question was possessed by Hamillion. Dame Syllable, if I may be so bold, how does one fight those who make stories grow cold? What weapon can stand against such a foe that seeks to erase all we love and know? A sad smile was given by Dame Syllable, and rising from her throne was done. Approach of Hamillion was done by her, and placing of a hand on his shoulder occurred. The mightiest weapon, in darkness or light, is the power of words, when wielded just right. Remember, dear keeper, in your darkest hour, that stories have magic, a world-changing power. With those words, a feeling of warmth spreading through him was experienced by Hamillion. The plot compass in his pocket began to hum and glow, as if resonating with the truth of Dame Syllable's words. Thank you. Gratitude was expressed by Hamillion. A bow of his head was given. Remembrance of your wisdom will be done. Turning to Marlowe was done by him, determination in his voice. To the forgotten library movement must be made by us. Saving of sonnet must be done, and stopping of the erasers before more damage can be caused by them. A nod was given by Marlowe, a grim smile on his face. You're starting to sound like a real detective, kid. Let's hope that librarian brain of yours can help us navigate whatever we find in that forgotten library. As the dame's establishment was left by them and steps back into the foggy streets of the Noir Nebula were taken, the weight of their mission was felt heavily by Hamillion. But alongside the trepidation, a sense of excitement was also present. For the first time in his life, part of a real adventure was what he was. And come what may, doing of his best to save the stories, and perhaps this entire world, was what would be done by him. As we delve deeper into Hamillion's adventure in the Noir Nebula, we're encountering a rich tapestry of language and storytelling techniques. The passive voice continues to be employed, creating an air of mystery that perfectly suits the noir genre. Moreover, we're seeing how different characters use language in unique ways. Dame Syllable's poetic speech is a wonderful example of how English can be manipulated for artistic effect. Her use of rhyme and meter demonstrates the flexibility and beauty of the language. As we continue to follow Hamillion's journey, pay attention to the descriptive language and idiomatic expressions used. They add color and depth to the narrative, making it more engaging and helping to paint a vivid picture of this fantastical world. Now, let's return to our story and see what challenges await Hamillion and Marlowe in the Forgotten Library. David, navigation through the labyrinthine streets of the Noir Nebula was done by Hamillion and Marlowe, the fog growing thicker with each step taken. The buildings around them seemed to shift and change, as if the very fabric of reality was becoming unstable. Consultation of the plot compass was frequently done by Hamillion, its needle wavering but always pointing them towards their destination. As they walked, filling in of Hamillion on the situation was done by Marlowe. You see, kid, explanation was given by Marlowe, his voice low and gravelly. This nebula used to be a thriving hub of creativity. Stories of every genre were born here, nurtured and sent out into the multiverse. But then the Erasers showed up. A grimace was made by him, and a drag on his ever-present cigarette was taken. At first it was just a word here, a sentence there, hardly noticeable. But then entire paragraphs began to vanish, and before we knew it, whole stories were disappearing. Furrowing of Hamillion's brow occurred as he listened. But why? What is gained by the Erasers from erasing stories? A shrug was given by Marlowe. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some say they feed off the creative energy. Others think they're trying to reshape reality itself. All we know for sure is that they need to be stopped. As they turned a corner, a gasp was emitted by Hamillion. Before them stood a building that defied logic and reason. It seemed to be made of thousands upon thousands of book pages, fluttering in a non-existent wind. The structure twisted and turned in on itself, creating impossible angles and dizzying spirals. "The Forgotten Library," announcement in a hushed tone was made by Marlowe. "This is where stories come to die, or to be reborn, if we have anything to say about IIT.
Approach of the entrance was done by them, a doorway that seemed to be formed from title pages of books long forgotten.
As a hand was reached out by Hamillion to push it open, a sudden chill ran down his spine. "Wait!" Whispered urgency was used by Marlowe. Grabbing of Hamillion's arm was done. "Before entering is done by us, something needs to be understood by you. The Forgotten Library. It plays tricks on your mind. The stories inside, they'll try to pull you in, make you forget why you came. No matter what happens, remembrance of who you are and why you're here must be done." A nod was given by Hamillion, his throat feeling dry. Understanding is had. "Sticking together should be done by us." "Together," agreement was voiced by Marlowe. "Now, let's go save some stories." Pushing open of the door was done by them, and stepping into the Forgotten Library occurred. Immediately a sensation of being enveloped by words was felt. The air itself seemed to be made of whispered narratives, half-forgotten tales, and abandoned plot lines. Shelves stretched up into infinity, books of every size and shape lining them, but something was wrong. Many of the books were fading, their titles becoming illegible, their pages turning transparent. "This way," indication was made by Marlowe, pointing down a shadowy aisle. "Feeling of Sonnet's presence is had by me." Following of Marlowe was done by Hamillion, but finding it increasingly difficult to focus was what was experienced. The stories around them were calling out, begging to be read, to be remembered. More than once, catching of himself reaching for a fading book was done, only to shake his head and continue on. Suddenly, a sound was heard, a muffled cry coming from deeper within the library. Breaking into a run was done by Marlowe and Hamillion, weaving through the labyrinthine shelves. Bursting into a clearing was done by them, and a sight that chilled Hamillion to his core was beheld. Sonnet, a man made entirely of flowing script, was being held by two shadowy figures. The Erasers, as watched by Hamillion, horror-struck, seeing of words being pulled from Sonnet's body was done, dissolving into nothingness. "Stop!" Shouting was done by Marlowe. Drawing of a gun that seemed to be made of solid ink was done. Release of him is demanded. Turning of the Erasers occurred, their featureless faces somehow conveying menace. One of them spoke, its voice a horrifying whisper that seemed to consume sound itself. "Ah, the detective who fancies himself a hero," mockery was conveyed. "And what's this, a new ally? How? Quaint." Stepping forward was done by Hamillion, every instinct telling him to run, but standing his ground was what was done. I am the keeper of stories, declaration was made, surprise at the strength in his voice being felt. Demand for the release of Sonnet is made by me, and cessation of your destruction of these tales. Laughter like tearing paper was emitted by the erasers. A keeper of stories? How delightful! Tell us, little keeper, how do you intend to stop us? We are the inevitable. We are the end of all tales. Faltering was nearly done by Hamillion, but then remembrance of Dame Syllable's words occurred. The power of words, when wielded just right, was the mightiest weapon. Drawing upon courage he didn't know he possessed, speaking was done by Hamillion, his voice growing stronger with each word. You call yourselves inevitable, but forgetfulness of the true power of stories has been done by you. Proclamation was made by him. Stories are not just words on a page, they are ideas, dreams, and hopes given form. They shape worlds and change lives. As he spoke, noticing of a faint glow emanating from the plot compass in his pocket, was done. Removal of it was performed, and holding it high was done. Every story ever told lives on in the hearts and minds of those it has touched. Erasure of that cannot be done by you. Beginning of swirling of the air around them was witnessed, pages from the surrounding books lifting and circling Hamillion. The erasers took a step back, uncertainty in their posture for the first time. Sonnet, addressing of the fading poet, was done by Hamillion. Remembrance of your verses must be done by you. Your words have power. Use them. A nod was given by Sonnet, and straightening up was done by him despite his weakened state. Beginning of recitation was done by him, his voice gaining strength with each line. In shadows deep where stories sleep, a light of hope does glow, for tales of old, when bravely told, can vanquish any foe. With each word spoken by Sonnet, becoming more solid was what happened to him, the words that had been erased flowing back into his form. The erasers hissed, attempts to retreat being made. Raising of his ink gun was done by Marlowe, a fierce grin on his face. Oh, no, you don't. Time for you to face the final chapter. Firing of the gun was done, but instead of bullets, streams of shimmering ink were what shot out. Contact with the erasers was made by the ink, and beginning of dissolution of their shadowy forms was what occurred. Realization by Hamillion that this was their chance was come to. Raising of the plot compass higher was done, and speaking in a clear, strong voice was what was done by him. By the power of every story ever told, every word ever written, and every tale yet to be imagined, banishment of you from this realm is what is done. Return to the void from whence you came. A blinding light was emitted by the plot compass, and screaming by the erasers was done as they were pulled into it. In a flash, disappearance of them was what happened, leaving behind nothing but a few wisps of shadow. Silence fell over the forgotten library. Then, slowly, a change began to be noticed. The fading books on the shelves started to solidify, their titles becoming clear once more. The air itself seemed to become clearer, filled with the promise of countless stories waiting to be told. Slumping to his knees was what was done by Hamillion, exhaustion washing over him. Rushing to his side was done by Marlowe and Sonnet. Kid that was something else. Admiration was expressed by Marlowe, helping Hamillion to his feet. A weak smile was given by Hamillion. Surprise at myself is felt by me. Uncertainty about having it in me was what was possessed. Having of it in you was always done. Assertion was made by Sonnet, his form now strong and vibrant with words. A true keeper of stories is what you are. Saving of not just me was what was done by you, but all the stories in this library. Looking around was done by Hamillion. amazement at the transformation being felt. The forgotten library now pulsed with life and potential. "What happens now?" was asked by him. A chuckle was emitted by Marlowe. "Now? Now the real work begins." These stories need to be protected, shared, and brought back into the light. Nodding in agreement was done by Sonnet. Indeed. Volunteers to help rebuild and maintain the library are what will be found by me. Allowance of this to happen again cannot be done. Feeling of the plot compass growing warm in his hand was what was experienced by Hamillion. Looking down at it was what was done. Seeing the needle spinning, pointing to new adventures, new stories to save. "I have to go," realization was come to by Hamillion. Other realms, other stories. They need them. Understanding was shown in Marlowe's eyes. "Go, kid. Holding down the fort here is what will be done by us. But don't be a stranger, you hear? The Noir Nebula could use a hero like you now and then." Embracing of both Marlowe and Sonnet was done by Hamillion, gratitude for their help and friendship being felt. Then, taking a deep breath, holding up of the plot compass was done. "Take me where I'm needed," whispered words were spoken by him. The world began to spin, the forgotten library fading around him. As Hamillion was pulled into his next adventure, knowledge that he had found his true calling was possessed. A keeper of stories was what he was, and protection of the power of imagination across all realms was what would be done by him. What an exciting conclusion to Hamillion's adventure in the Noir Nebula.
This story has not only been a thrilling journey, but also a wonderful exploration of the English language.
Throughout this tale, we've seen the consistent use of passive voice, which adds a unique flavor to the narrative. This grammatical structure, while challenging to master, can be a powerful tool in storytelling, especially in creating an atmosphere of mystery and intrigue. We've also encountered a wealth of descriptive language and idiomatic expressions. Phrases like "holding down the fort" and "don't be a stranger" are excellent examples of how English uses figurative language to convey meaning. Moreover, the character of Sonnet introduced us to the rhythmic and rhyming potential of English, demonstrating how the language can be molded into poetic forms. This story of Hamillion Fluter, the unlikely hero who discovers his true calling as a keeper of stories, reminds us of the power of narratives and the importance of language in shaping our understanding of the world. As we conclude this episode, I encourage you to reflect on the story and the language used to tell it. Try to incorporate some of the new vocabulary and structures into your own English practice. Remember, just like Hamillion, you have the power to master the English language and tell your own incredible stories. Keep practicing, keep learning, and who knows? Maybe one day you'll be the one crafting tales that span across realms and capture the imagination of others. If you've enjoyed this story and want to continue improving your English through engaging narratives, don't forget to subscribe to our Speak English Fluently channel. We have many more adventures and language lessons waiting for you. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep telling your stories.